And that is the midpoint formula. Okay. So here's the first thing I want you to think about. If you are on a number line, you know, where it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, or -1, -2, -3, right? If we're on a number line like this, and I give you a point at -3, and I give you a point at 3, and I ask you, what's the point that falls perfectly in the middle of those two? Can you tell me? What is it? 0, right? So this point here would be 0. That is the midpoint, okay? What we're looking for is the point that is perfectly in the middle of the 2 points that we're given, okay? But it's not always that easy, right? I gave you one where it's the same distance to the left as it is to the right of 0, okay? But what if it's something like this? This is -2, and this is 6, and I ask you to find that middle point for me. That takes either a little more thought, or walking through a number line and counting how many spaces you have, or what's easier, what you're gonna do, is you're gonna take an average. Do you remember how to find an average of something? Yeah, Justin. You don't multiply them, you add them, and then do what to them? Divide by the number of numbers you have, right? Okay, so if I have -2 and 6, I can go -2 plus 6 and then divide by 2, and that's going to give me my midpoint. So you add them together and divide by 2. So -2 plus 6, that's 4, divided by 2, which is 2. So that means the middle point here would fall at 2. Okay, which makes sense because from -2 to 2 is 4 units, and from 2 to 6 is 4 units. So they have to be the same distance away, right? But what you're doing essentially is you're finding a midpoint. You're adding them together, and you're cutting it in half. So if I said that, let's do this. It's always divided by 2 because you're always finding it between two numbers. Yeah. If I said A is at, oops, I'm doing a coordinate and I don't want a coordinate yet. A is at -4. B is at 9. And I said find the midpoint between those two. What are you going to do with that? If you have -4 and +9. Add, subtract, multiply, divide, what are we doing? We are going to divide, but what do we have to do first? This process here, right? We're going to add them together and then divide by what? 2. So -4 plus 9 divided by 2, right? Just add them together, cut it in half. So you would get -4 plus 9 is 5 divided by 2. So the midpoint would be 5 over 2 or 2.5. Okay, so between -4 and +9, perfectly between them, would be 2.5. Okay, so it's just like finding an average. It's just add them together, divide by 2. Yeah. Not subtract, add them, and then divide. So -4 right here, right? -4 plus 9, you're adding them together. And then you're dividing by 2.
Oh, and then it just happened to be another -4 right there.
No, because we took these numbers. We took the -4 and the 9, and that's what we plugged in. Add them together, divide by 2. So if I did, let's say C was at -3. I keep wanting to do it as a point. C is -3. D is 7. Okay, and I want to know the midpoint. I'm going to do -3 plus 7, add them together, and then divide by 2. So -3 plus 7 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So the midpoint there would be 2, perfectly between -3 and 7. okay? Okay, so that's the idea. Midpoint formula is a little bit more complex because we deal with an x and a y value instead of just one number, okay? So here's what midpoint formula does. You will have this setup for midpoint formula. Your midpoint is going to be your x1 value plus your x2 value divided by 2. And then your y1 value plus your y2 value divided by 2. Oh, we're moving. Okay, so that is the midpoint formula that you're going to use. But now here's the thing. Instead of just being given two numbers, you're given 2 points on the coordinate plane. Okay, so let's say you were given that A is the point -2, 4, and B is the point 4, 6. Okay, so if you think about a coordinate plane, something like this, -2, 4 would be around here, right? Here's point A. You don't have to graph this. I'm just helping you to see it. You will never have to plot these points, so just watch me do this part. B is at 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6. B would be over here, okay? So what they're saying for this problem is find the midpoint between A and B. Okay, so between those 2 points, what is your midpoint going to be? What you're going to do is come up with how that can get plugged into that midpoint formula. Okay, so the midpoint should end somewhere around here, but we want to know what is that point, and you don't want to have to graph it every time. So here's what you do. You have an x1 and a y1, and you have an x2 and a y2, okay? Every time, write that x1, y1, x2, y2 in. It's very helpful, okay? So if this is my setup right here, and this is my formula, I have everything I need in my formula. What is my x1, if we're looking here? I got my lightsaber on. Okay, my x1 value, so we're looking at this x1 up here. What number is going to go there? The -2, right? That's this x1 value here. So you're going to do -2 plus, what's my x2 value? 4, right? So you have your -2 and your 4. So -2 plus 4 divided by 2. Okay, so that's this. We just did this. x1 plus x2 divided by 2. Now you got to do it with your y's. What's your y1 value? 4. Plus, what's your y2 value? 6 divided by 2. So when you simplify that, -2 plus 4 is 2 divided by 2. 4 plus 6 is 10 divided by 2. And then from there, all you do is you simplify. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So your answer, your midpoint between the 2 points we started with is 1, 5. And if you look, that's exactly, where we ended up there. Okay, so you're just finding a midpoint. I'm going to give you one more set of numbers, and then I'll give you the rest of the time to work, and I will come around and help you out if you need some extra help. Okay, so let me write out the midpoint formula again. So x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. All right, so let's say you have the points C, which is at -3, -1, and D, which is at 5, 3. Do you remember what the first thing I said you should do on these is? What are you going to call negative 3? Right. You need to label your x1, y1, and your x2, y2. So we're going to call this negative 3, x1. Okay, now here's the thing. I could call the 5 x1, and that's okay, as long as the 3 then is x or y1. So you got to keep your 1s on one point and your 2s on another point. So if I call negative 3 x1, then negative 1 should be what? y1 or y2? y1. Okay, so you have x1, y1. And then your point D, you're going to have x2 and y2. Okay? So I'm going to give you a second to plug that in on your own. So set it up. If this is our x1, y1, and our x2, y2, plug it into this midpoint formula and see what you get, and then I'll work it out for you. But try it on your own first. Okay. Tell me what you plugged in for your x's. What's this part of your setup for midpoint formula? Negative 3 plus 5 divided by 2. Okay, what's your second part? Negative 1 plus what? No. What's your y2? So you're doing y1 plus y2, right? So that's a positive 3?
I just wrote it down.
Oh, gotcha. So you're going to do negative 1 plus 3 divided by 2. Okay, what's negative 3 plus 5? Mental math. 2, right? 2 divided by 2 is 1. So you get 1 for your x value. And then your y value, what's negative 1 plus 3? 2 divided by 2 is 1 again. So you get for your midpoint the point 1, 1. Okay, any questions on that?